Podcast number 7. All right. So today's podcast is all about your environment, finding time for yourself, and creating boundaries. So to start off, your environment. So for me, your environment is pretty much any place that you spend a lot of time. Okay. So most people are going to associate that with your home, but then you've got your work, your gym, the places where you go to socialize. Basically, anywhere which you are in is your environment. Okay, so I feel like it's really important to have a strong sense of self because you want to be able to go into an environment, whether it's a new environment, an environment where there's people who are new to that environment, or just hosting people at your house. You want to be able to feel comfortable within yourself. All right. Now, I feel like really the only way where you can develop that is to spend time by yourself. I think if you're always spending time with other people, there's so many different distractions. There's so many different things which you need to talk to this person. You need to sort that out. There's this expectation. There's that expectation. There's kind of the right way to do it for like a social kind of thing, and sometimes you can get lost up. You can get caught up and lost with trying to kind of please other people. And I feel like that's where the whole boundaries thing needs to come in, because if you spend all your time trying to please other people, trying to sort this out, running errands for that person, can you sort me this out, can you sort me that out, then you lose that sense of respect for yourself in terms of my time is my time. I know a lot of people who basically spend probably about 85% of their time just doing stuff for other people. They don't have boundaries because whenever anybody asks them to do something, they'll just say yes. And then, unfortunately, they kind of expect other people to behave like that as well. Because it's a bit of a shock when they ask you, can you do this? And you say no. They're like a little bit like, oh, you've said no. But on the flip side of that, you can also see that over a long period of time, they're like, oh, you're allowed to say no. Because, I've spent a lot of time around people like that, and it's very easy to become one of those people, I think it's osmosis where you attract and you just collect what's around you. It bleeds inside of you and you just absorb it. So when you're brought up in an environment where there are no boundaries, or there's like things like in order to give you have to expect something back, or there's always a right and a wrong way to do something, you can kind of always feel like you're almost walking on eggshells. And I think when that is a normal thing, if you're brought up in a family where you always have to be super considerate of everybody else, so and so's asleep, you're not allowed to make a little noise while you're closing a cupboard, or you have to be super observant about the way someone behaves, or if you've got a parent or maybe both parents who are really touchy, they might be addicts to something, you are always conscious about the way that you communicate with them, and small little things which you do might have a big consequence, so then you're always kind of fearful. Again, that's another way which you are having to put somebody else's feelings and somebody else's just general energy above your own. And then that again bleeds into you having a lack of boundaries. So it's very important, I feel like, that at some point in your life that you take time to actually go and find out what your boundaries are. What do you enjoy doing? Take time for yourself to go and learn about, do you like reading? Do you like walking? Do you like music? And I know, it's a bit obvious, like, you'd be like, oh, well, of course I like music. It's like, but how do you know? Like, if you've never had any space away from the environment that you were brought up in, then how do you know that what you like isn't just a big habit? Like, it's really weird, but a lot of people smoke, but if they were brought up in a family who didn't smoke, they wouldn't smoke. It's the whole nature versus nurture type thing. And it's really, I find it fascinating that there's so many different things which people are so used to that they misunderstand how they themselves feel. It's like they think that they enjoy something just because they've done it so many times, or because it was normal when they were growing up. Their environment has created a place where they didn't have that opportunity to be able to take that time for themselves. And another thing, I've been reading a book recently. It's called The Book That You Wish Your Parents Have Read and Your Children Will Be Glad That You Did. Oh, it's here actually. It's by Philippa Perry. Amazing book. And she was saying in that book that one of the biggest things that causes depression and anxiety in adults is simply not being soothed as a child. So when you're feeling pain, when you're upset, when you're worried, when you're scared, when you're hurt, if your parents haven't done a good job of basically just letting you know that it's okay, things will get better, I'm here for you, comforting you. If you're upset about something, if you're angry about something, parents are very good at being able to just dismiss it or ignore it or counteract it, or try and downplay it, because without going into it too much, because basically they either don't have the capacity to do it, or they don't have the emotional sort of intelligence or the emotional fitness or the emotional awareness to be able to understand that it's their child's pain. It's not going to make it any worse by addressing it and allowing it. In fact, it really helps the child and then manifests itself in a lot of different ways when you're an adult. So, if you're in an environment like that and you've never taken any time away from that, there's probably a lot of stuff which you don't even understand that's going on inside of you, which would be very useful to you to have some time out of that. I think that's why a lot of people really enjoy going traveling. It's why a lot of people really like to go and experience new things. Like, I was having a conversation with my friend the other day about how fascinating it is that you can meet people who do something in a totally different way to you, and you've never even had the thought that something is capable of being done in that way. And I just think it's kind of an irony where I feel like you need to go and explore new places, you need to go to new worlds and, go and have new cultures and meet new friends to learn how that it can be done, and go and experience stuff that's outside of your comfort zone. But I feel like what's more important, because one of the things that's potentially not so great about going to seek external stuff, going out and finding new stuff and going, changing cities, for example, if you've had some crazy experience go on in your life, is you're kind of allowing that to, you're again looking for something external to try and remove that negative stuff. I feel like one thing that I'm very happy that I've done is I've had all sorts of crazy, wacky, weird and wonderful stuff happen to me. I've always stayed in the same city, and I feel like it wasn't a conscious decision. I'm definitely going to move out of the city at some point in the next couple of years, maybe go abroad. But I feel like one of the things that it's forced me to do is it's forced me to grow internally, because I've not had the opportunity to go and leave everything behind. It's forced me to come to terms with it. It's forced me to grow. I'm much more of a well-rounded person. I've developed and matured in my head and my perspective on stuff. Like, I've developed into such a strong, resilient, happy, calm, well-rounded, understanding, empathetic person. And I was none of those things like 5 years ago, and that's because I've been through all of these circumstances. I've kind of seeked all of these different things out, but then if they've gone wrong or when I don't like them, I've not just ran away from the circumstance. I've tried to figure out, I've tried to understand, I've tried to learn, I've asked questions, I've had the conversations, I've reflected, and I've been able to develop myself because of that. And I feel like self-awareness is such a big thing with stuff like that, because if you're in an environment which is doing you bullshit, if it's really fucking you up, but you've never had any time out of that, you might not even know that you are being caused to have feelings of anxious and anxiety. You might not know that this person who you see every day bleeds all of their negative energy onto you, and it actually causes you to feel depressed. You might not know that by spending time around this person, their mood is always up and down and left and right and blah blah blah. So you always have to walk on eggshells around them. And taking time out of that environment is super amazing, but being self-aware and being able to spend time by yourself, I think it's two things. For me, what I did, again, without even realizing it, is I took time out in terms of I moved to a different address. I was living at an address with some people, and it just really wasn't working. It was really bad for a number of reasons. I moved to a couple of different addresses, hopped around a little bit, living with friends and family members and stuff. And then when I moved back in with the original people, because I'd spent time by myself and I'd learn what I value, and I understood what right and wrong was for me. I'd set my boundaries. I understood that I like my energy, and I was aware of how it feels to then have somebody come in and, dirty the water. Because before, it was, well, that's just kind of how this person is, and, you just let him get on with it. Whereas now, it's more a case of, I'm going to avoid that because I understand that that has negative consequences for me. And I feel like you only understand how things make you feel if you've had them around a long time. The only way that you can gauge that, if you kind of got the blinkers on a little bit, is you need to remove yourself. You need to create space. Whether it's on a sort of micro level in terms of removing yourself from the situation, going for a walk, reading, meditating is an absolutely amazing one. Or whether it's a bit more on a macro of, moving out of the address, moving out of the city, moving to the other side of the planet. I've got a friend who lived with his parents up until being about 27. Never, really had a missus that he lived with. He didn't have a gigantic friendship group, so he wasn't going out drinking all the time. He went on a 6-month tour around America. So he lived in the UK. He went on a 6-month tour around America, and he come back like a different person. Like, you could just tell that, as I said, he'd gone there. He wasn't specifically trying to chase anything. He wasn't trying to move away from anything negative. He wasn't in a rush. But I just think purely because he'd had so much time by himself, being able to be selfish in a way, which I do feel like you need to be selfish a lot in life. He'd had those experiences. He'd had that time by himself. He was able to wake up in the morning and think, what do I want to do today? And how do I want to do it? And when do I want to do it? And not feel like there's any consequences. Because that's one of the big issues, is if there's always a consequence, you're always second guessing yourself. So, another reason why having that time alone is because you have that freedom to be able to do what you want, and be able to, if you want to change your mind like that, you can change your mind. If you want to do the same thing for 7 days in a row, you can. If you want to fast for a week straight and go dance in the fucking forest naked, be careful where you do it, but you can do that. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in a place of, fear of what other people think. Sometimes you don't even realise that you make decisions because of what somebody might or might not think about you. And then if you're making decisions coming from that kind of place, you are definitely not making the decisions for what's best for you. And again, I think time away from everything will show you that there are things inside of you which you might have not had a chance to grow and learn from and heal things as well, So, I'm going back to my friend, sorry, I digressed. He went around America for 6 months, really, really enjoyed that. And then he come back to the UK, and then when he come back to the UK after being away from his parents for 6 months, he was like, yo, this is actually shit. Like, I didn't even realise how many times throughout the day, like, people were asking me to do things for them, and I would just automatically say yes, because, you listen to your parents, you do what your parents tell you. But he was like, I'm a fucking grown man. Why are my parents asking me to do things like this? He was like, having to tiptoe around my dad or my mum talking to me about stuff that you shouldn't really talk to your mum about. And he just understood that these lines of parenthood were a little bit blurred and he wasn't comfortable with it. But he only got that perspective because he took time out. And now, weirdly enough, he actually lives on a different continent. He lives in Japan. So he moved quite literally to the other side of the world. He's been living out there for, I think, 2.5 years now, and he absolutely loves it. And I swear to God, every single time I talk to the guy, he's upgraded himself. And the mad thing is, he's not even practically trying to do it. It's not like he's reading personal development books. He doesn't meditate. It's not like he's trying to become he's not consciously trying to become a more well-rounded person. It's just purely because he's by himself and he's allowed to, think about what he wants to think about and spend his time doing things that he wants to do and be selfish. And he doesn't have to partake in X, Y, and Z because that's what other people do. Because he's got that freedom, it's like he's becoming himself. He's finding himself. He's getting in touch with himself so much more because he's not forced to have those external conversations and run in the same loops. Because that's another thing about living with people. A lot of people like to be in a fixed mindset. They like to keep things the way that they are. They like to go around in their loops because they're easy. You don't have to put a lot of thought and effort into a loop. You come home and you complain about the same things. You eat the same thing for dinner, and you go to the same job and moan at the same people. And whereas when you're by yourself, you have that breathing space. You just calm. Nobody can interrupt it. So you relax. You have energy. You feed your own energy. And then because you've got that space, you've got that calmness, you then, I feel like because you've built that energy up and nobody's taking it, then you then have this excess of energy to then go and start and put into something else. So you might have a hobby, you might learn a language, you might go out and meet a different group of friends, you might start and pick up, a sporting activity that you would have never picked up. And it's so amazing what happens when you find that space for yourself. So I feel like having that calm, having that peace and the quiet, it gives you inner space, Having that calm and peace gives you that place inside where you can have those conversations with yourself, where you can, treat yourself without having to think about others. Because, I'm all for thinking about others and, being grateful and giving and kindness and all that type of stuff. But you need to also do that stuff for yourself. And it's weird because I think a lot of people, I don't know, a lot of parents and their kids have got weird relationships, but it's almost like parents want to be able to tell their kids what to do. Even when we're adults. So that's where having the boundaries come in, because I feel like once you've gone through something like that, where you've learned about yourself, you've understood how you want to be, how you interact with people, where you want to say, no, this is my time, then when you go back and you're around your parents or your friends or just people in general, you have a much better internal compass of what you find acceptable and not acceptable for yourself. Because if you don't ever take the time to develop that, then people will be able to see that you can be pushed around. People will know that you'll say yes to everything. I mean, you'll know somebody who's a yes man. 99%, if you ask them to do something, they'll just do it. And unfortunately, they're the type of people who end up living other people's lives, where they help other people to get the stuff that they want rather than spending time and doing stuff that you want. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the world who will exploit that, and sometimes people don't even realize that they're doing that. sometimes people will be so out of touch from reality and so out of touch of the human beings that we all are and how we're supposed to work together, they will literally just let other people do all of the work for them and sit there with their feet up. And it's just really shit, unfortunately. And that's why you need to be aware of it. That's why you need to go and do the work. That's why you need to have space for yourself, because it is going to give you self-freedom. It is going to give you confidence to know that if you want to say no to something, that is okay. All right? It's weird when you've always had consequences of saying no from close family members and you know, guardians and carers, then you can be afraid to say no as an adult. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is learning to say no to something, but understanding that you are allowed to say no to something. And if somebody is unhappy with you because you want to say no, then that's on them. You don't allow somebody to install in you a sense of feeling bad or regret because they don't like the fact that you're standing up for yourself. And that is probably one of the biggest things that I've learned over the past couple of years, is I don't give a shit. Like, it's unfortunate that you have that viewpoint and that you're unhappy with the fact that I'm standing up for myself. But if you're unhappy with the fact that I'm standing up for myself, that's probably because you've got an expectation that other people will do what you want because you're at the top. You know, you're the king of the castle, or you're the queen of the manor, or you don't have any boundaries yourself, so that you always say yes to everybody, but you expect everybody to do the same. It's like, no, I'm sorry, I don't work like that. But that only comes from spending time with yourself and understanding and learning that it's okay, you know, and practice it. Do little things. Learn that being rejected is okay, you know. Like, I saw something the other day where somebody was talking about how to increase your capacity to deal with rejection. So basically people telling you no and you being okay with that. It was like, when next time you're buying something, just ask if you can have it half price. Even if you 100% know that they are going to tell you that you can't, it's just fun to be like, oh, can I have that for half price? And they're like, no. And you're like, okay. Because it just gets you used to people saying no, and it's not like, oh, it kills me, it pains me. I feel like as a collective, we can do that for other people, you know. It's like, you just need to get used to me saying no because I'm comfortable saying it. So yeah, I feel like your environment will shape you, but you can also use your environment. You can create your own environment internally so that the external environment doesn't affect you. You can create boundaries and other people will respect those. And if somebody can't respect your boundaries, then that's not somebody who you want around you, because they don't respect you. And I feel like once you've been able to set your own boundaries, you understand then why it's so important for other people to have boundaries. So if you're going out or you're doing some event or you want to go and meet somebody and they say, no, I'm busy, it's like, okay, cool, I understand, no problem. And it's like, not that thing then of like, oh, well, you said no and that means you don't want to be my friend. And, you know, I saw you on a date and you didn't, no. And it's like, you know, it's not that I don't care about you. It's just that I prioritize myself over everybody else. And I want you to do the same. Like, I'm not being selfish because I want to be selfish. I'm being selfish because I want my energy to be as high as possible, so that when it comes time to help other people, I'm bringing my full self to it, rather than burning myself out by doing everything for everybody else and then actually being resentful about it because I don't get to have my time, I don't get to do what I want to do. And that's just, you know, you're going around in a negative cycle. You're using your energy up for other people, and then you never have energy for yourself, so then you feel shit about that. So then to make yourself feel better, you say yes to other people, you don't have boundaries, and you just keep going around in this negative cycle. So I feel like being aware of that, having the self-awareness to know sort of if you want to move towards that place of being able to say no, because I do feel like if you have the ability to say no, when you do say yes to something, they mean so much more, because people know that you have got no issue with being like, nah, I'm not coming. Why not? I just don't want to. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, you know, it's nothing personal. I need to spend time with me. And I've started, because I know I've got some friends who do take that stuff really personal. I'll just say I've got plans. Like, oh, what you doing? Like, oh, I'm not sure yet, but I've definitely got something on. Okay, and then it's like that. It's like kind of takes the edge off, you know. You don't need to be like, yo, fuck you. I don't want to see you anymore, you dickhead. You know, you can just say, oh, I can't. I've got plans. You know. Oh, would you mind doing this? Oh, I'm sorry. I've got to sort something else out. My bad. So yeah, I feel like creating your own environment internally, taking time, understanding what you want, how you feel, where you want to direct your energy, and then as a result of that, you set some nice, healthy boundaries, which just allows mutual respect for yourself and other people with you. Peace.